We're back in Hall E with Ben Rossett, designer of Brew Crafters, and Ben's going to give us a good rundown of the game and how it works and how a turn might go. So Ben, welcome back.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Okay, give us a show how Brew Crafters works.
All right, well this is Brew Crafters, and in Brew Crafters you've opened your own craft brewery in your hometown, and you're competing against other local brewers to be named the Brew Crafter of your city. The game is played over 3 years, and there are 4 seasons per year, so there are 12 rounds or seasons in the game. Every season of the game, there is a market action phase. You'll see the market action tile here, and then a brewery action phase. And so every season of the game, all players, and this is a 2 to 5 player game, are going to get to take 2 market actions each. And these go playing to the left, so first player takes their action, and then everyone takes the first action and comes back around again. And most of what you're doing in the market is competing with other players to get the ingredients that you need to brew beer. So there's 6 different types of ingredients in the game, and the different markets will give you different ingredients. Some of them will also allow you to do special things like hiring new brewery shifts, hiring skilled workers, making deals with private investors, or forming local partnerships. Now it's important to note that you're competing here in the market. So if one player goes to this malt market and takes the hops, the malt that's being offered there, no other player may use that malt market in this season of the game. So the next player is going to have to choose a different market to use and a different action to take. So once all players have taken both of their market actions, we're then going to move to the brewery phase, where every player gets to take 1 action per brewery shift that they employ, and that action happens inside of their own brewery. There are 3 different brewery actions that you can take: installing new equipment, processing beer, or doing lab research. Now it's important to note that inside of the breweries, players are not blocking each other. So all players can process beer, or all players can install equipment during the same season of the game. So let's take a look down here at a player's personal brewery and their personal research lab that they start with. Now the brewery starts out simple. The only things that a player has in their brewery at the beginning of the game are a storehouse where they can store 12 ingredients, a single processing line where they can process 1 batch of beer at a time, and their research lab shown here, which offers 4 different areas where players can conduct research. Now there are a number of different buildings and equipment that players can install into their brewery throughout the game. And each one of these equipment has a particular place in the brewery where it will go. There's a farm where you can use to harvest your own hops and fruit. You can add more storage capacity, build an oak barrel house, which gives you additional reputation for aging certain recipes in oak barrels. You can upgrade your mash tun, upgrade your processing system from a single to a double line. You can build a brew pub where customers can come and buy beer from you right there at your brewery. You can specialize your research lab by adding a yeast lab, and of course you can add a tour and tasting room, which every good craft brewery has. So throughout the course of the game, players may add some of these upgrades into their brewery. During the game, players may do lab research. Now that's one of those other actions that players can do inside their brewery each season of the game. There are 4 areas where players can conduct research, and the further that you advance on one particular track or aspect of research, the better you get in that area of research and the more productive or efficient you become. So depending on what your strategy is, you can mix certain buildings and equipment with certain types of lab research, and that'll give you a really good engine for picking a particular strategy during the game. Now, of course, what you're doing and the way that you're going to score most of your reputation, which is what you're earning to become the best brewer, the player with the most reputation wins the game. What you're going to be doing is brewing beer, and that's how you're going to earn most of your reputation throughout the game. So as I mentioned before, when you go to the market, you will collect different ingredients in the market. And each one of these 9 beer recipes that you see here that we're playing the game with have a specific list of ingredients that are needed to brew that beer. For instance, this Simply Stout needs 4 malt, 2 hops, and 1 yeast in order to brew 1 batch. Whereas something a little more complex, like this Bombastic Lambic, needs 2 malt, 1 hops, 1 yeast, but also 3 fruit, which are an advanced ingredient. So as players collect ingredients from the market, those ingredients will go into their storehouse on their brewery board. So let's say that this player has collected some malt, some hops, some yeast, and now in their brewery phase of this season, they want to actually process beer. So they'll take one of their brewery shifts and they'll use it to process beer. And now this player has 3 malt, 2 hops, and 1 yeast, and they can brew an ale by having 3 malt, 2 hops, and 1 yeast. So they'll take their ingredients, they'll trade those into the supply, and they'll take an ale beer batch and put that in their fermentation tank on their brewery floor, which indicates that they've brewed a batch of ale. Okay? Now the way that you're going to process beer is later in the game when the player collects more ingredients from the market, and again has more ingredients here that they can use to brew, the player can take the process beer action again. When you process beer, you run your entire processing brewery system. So the first thing that will happen is you'll get to bottle anything that's in your fermentation tank. That opens up space in your fermentation tank and you can brew a new batch of beer. If this player now has 4 malt, 2 hops, and a yeast, that's enough to brew a stout. So they might trade those in and then take a stout beer batch token and put that into their fermentation tank. Okay? Now the next time the player goes to brew beer, anything that's in their bottling system ships and they sell it out to the market. So that'll come over here, it'll stay there till the end of the game where they'll receive reputation or points for it, and they'll collect $2. So every batch of beer that a player sells, they get $2 because they've sold that off to the market. Now selling that beer opens up space in the bottling line, so they can now take their stout and move that over to the bottling line. And then again, that opens up space in the fermentation tank, and the player can take any new ingredients that they've accumulated if they have the right mix for a particular recipe and brew a new batch of beer into their fermentation tank. So that's how the processing system works. You get to run it like a real brewery runs their processing system. You get to upgrade your buildings and equipment, which give you certain particular bonuses for taking different types of strategies and brewing different types of beers. And of course you get to specialize in lab research into a particular area of the game. Now there's a lot more that players do in Brew Crafters. In the market you can choose to hire special skilled workers. There are 9 skilled workers that are available at the beginning of the game. There's actually a deck of 24 skilled workers that the game ships with, but only 9 of them are used in any game. So that offers a lot of replay value that you can mix and match those 24 different workers. But if a player does choose to hire a skilled worker, like this player might choose through the market to hire the advanced ingredient importer, that skilled worker comes to work for that brewery, and that player gets the benefit of the advanced ingredient importer for the rest of the game, and no other brewery may hire the advanced ingredient importer. Okay? Players can also hire more brewery shifts. Having more shifts allows you to take more than one action inside your brewery each season of the game. And then players are also competing over these special gold label recipes. So for each game, again, we have 9 recipes here that are used in the game. But just like the skilled workers, there are 24 different recipes that the game ships with. So each game there'll be different recipes with different mixes of ingredients that are needed, which also offer a lot of replay value. But these advanced recipes here represent new beer recipes that have not been introduced yet into your local market. So the first player that's able to ship each one of these advanced recipes out to the market gets extra reputation for introducing a new style of beer into the local market and gets to take that gold label for that particular recipe. Each gold label is worth 3 reputation at the end of the game. All right. So players are competing over the 12 seasons of the game, going to the market and competing with each other over the workers, the brewery brewery shifts and the ingredients that they need to brew beer. And then, in each season, taking between 1 and 3 brewery actions, depending on how many brewery shifts they've hired, inside their brewery, building up the operation of their brewery.
Okay.
At the end of the game, the player with the most reputation wins. Again, that's going to come from the beer that you've brewed. Each batch is worth a particular number of reputation. That's going to come from certain buildings and equipment that you've installed, and certain game end research that you may have achieved will give you additional reputation. And at the end of the game, the player with the most reputation wins.
Awesome. Can you give us maybe just 1 or 2 examples of some of the abilities of the characters and the maybe the experimentation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, give you a couple. For instance, let's take a look at the mash specialist. Okay, the mash specialist says each time you operate the mash tun, take 2 reputation. Now you don't start the game with a mash tun, but if you add in a mash tun as one of your brewery and equipment upgrades, and then you hire the mash specialist, now you've got quite a little engine going here. Because the mash tun, what that does is it saves you malt every time you brew beer. You have to use 1 less malt to brew each batch of beer because you're being more efficient with your malt. So if you've got the mash tun and then you hire the mash specialist, not only are you using less malt to brew beer, but then you're also getting extra reputation every time you use the mash tun. So that's one example of how some of the skilled workers can work well with particular types of equipment that are there, and you can really pick a particular strategy. There are other workers that help you in the market. For instance, this yeast market insider says when you receive only yeast from any market action space, take an equal number of malt. So if I use this market action space here in the yeast market, and let's say that there were 2 yeast available in the market at that time, if I had previously hired that yeast market insider and I got 2 yeast from the market, I would also get 2 free malt along with it. So the different workers help you to kind of pick a particular strategy and help you to specialize in either particular areas of research, or specialize in particular equipment, or specialize in particular ingredients that will naturally lead to you wanting to brew certain types of beer.
Cool. That looks awesome. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joel.